Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's our weekly study. No, it's not our weekly study. It's our daily study. We do this every day, our daily study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And today is our special Monday. Our Makeover Monday. And Makeover Monday is a day that we get to sort of reclaim what we want to be this week. A transcendental etch-a-sketch where we get to shake up whatever we did last week, whatever we went off track. Let's say, you know what? It's Monday. It's a chance to recalibrate. It's a chance to reinvent myself. And sometimes we just get pulled away off our track. And sometimes it's a spiritual practice, a dietary practice, a health practice. So on our Discord thread, everybody writes in what they want to change about themselves on Monday. Saleli G says, 1 day a week, she wants to chant 12 rounds of japa. That's a pretty good.
Okay.
That's pretty good. Arumar
Nice.
had this good one, which I thought was inspirational last week. 11 rounds by 10 a.m. See, when you I like putting a certain amount of time before I chant those big chunk of rounds in the morning too. So that was pretty smart. Sarah J. Worth says, asleep by 10 p.m., wake up at 4:30 p.m. So that's a big one on Makeover Mondays. It's like when I'm going to wake up, when I'm going to go to bed. And you try it for a week and see how it works.
I got a Makeover Monday idea.
What?
1 chapter of Bhagavad Gita per day. How's that?
You going to
Just
do
the
that?
verses.
Are you just telling me to do that? Or are you going to
I'm not telling you. I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility.
I'm going to make Makeover Mondays for everybody.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll do it. And anyone that wants to do it with me, do it with me, and we'll see how it goes next Monday. Right?
I'm reading Krishna Leela every night before I go to bed.
Okay. Very nice.
And I think tomorrow night I'm going to do a reading. So
You think?
No, I am.
Can we confirm it? All right.
I'm going to confirm. Wait, today's Monday. Tuesday, 8 p.m., 8 to 9.
Eastern
You can
time.
join me on Patreon. This is a community-supported show. So if you want to support us, you go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. And then you have an access to a vault of live classes. We got practically a yoga school going on, workshops, classes, and a crazy, crazy message board, including our Monday. Oh, you know what Krishnagi said? Krishnagi was funny. She was saying how she tried no criticism, and then immediately she said she failed. No criticism. Well, guess I got good news for you, Krishnagi. It's Monday. That was last week. You can start over this week. She's giving me the thumbs up.
We got Jason Batista. He says he's going to do that with me, the 1 chapter a day.
All right.
Why don't you do it with me, Raghunath? You and me. Come on.
No, I'm doing Krishna Leela.
I'll do it with you, Kaustubha.
Okay, we got Marion on it now. All right, that's
bit.
3.
Oh.
Yeah.
And now Raghunath's thinking, I'm getting left out.
Okay.
But it's just the verses is all you have to do. So
You know what? I need Krishna's Leela in my life a little
Okay,
more.
that's cool.
I'm feeling a little Krishna low.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, we got more people. Tom's in. Dr.
All right.
Matthews in.
Yeah. So, by the way, if you're listening out there to the podcast
Julie
on Apple
Blondine is in.
Podcast,
Sarah Worthson.
we have a whole live Zoom class that checks in every morning at 5 a.m. If you want to join that Zoom class, you can. You got to email Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And then you get in. You know,
like 20 people here. They're coming like by the second here on the chat board. Everybody's going to do it.
Oh, God.
It's going to be a Bhagavad Gita week.
I feel like everybody's turning against me.
There's no problem with Krishna Leela. That's fine. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Leela, it's all good.
It's not a popularity contest.
Anyway, I've been hearing so much rave reviews of your sweet baby Krishna storytelling on Patreon.
You don't have to say that to make me feel good.
I know. I'm just saying it. It's true. You know, I'm saying it to promote it because, you know, so that people listening will want to tune in.
Oh, yeah. I didn't tell you this because anyway, I won't say it. But anyway, we're in a great place in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in Canto 2.
Oh, you know, I wanted to
2.
share one thing about my weekend before we go forward.
Okay.
I had a great day yesterday.
Well, it started off with that great interview with Eddie Stern.
It started even before that.
It started before. That's what I meant. It started like real early. Real early. That's when it got really crazy.
No, it did. I woke up early. I studied a bit and I prepared a bit for that interview. Then I went as the sun's rising. I went to Central Park. I chanted with Japa, watching the sunrise, going around the reservoir there. Absolutely beautiful. Wonderful way to start the day. Came back, did the interview, and then, did the description and sent that off to Mara. Mara posted the whole thing and all that. Then my Gita Priya and I went to Brighton Beach. Couldn't have been a more beautiful day out there. Then I went to the Kirtan, Bhakti Center was doing Kirtan out in Washington Square Park. Brajarani's heading that up. Meeting with people I hadn't seen in many months, doing Kirtan out in the park. Absolutely beautiful. Then I rode a bike home. It's perfect,
I weed whacked. That's serious. That's what.
Not all
a lot of weed whacking.
Really? Okay. Any case, it's just really nice to see everyone and be in nature again. I got on one of those bikes. They have those city bikes. Some of them have like a battery kind of on them. So like,
you rode one of the city bikes? Yeah,
but they have these ones that as soon as you start pedaling, it just like takes off.
Yeah, the new electric bikes, they're great.
Yeah, I'm like, you could just zip all over the city on those, I was having a great time through the park. It was really nice.
A little peek into Kaustubha's joy.
Well, September is the nicest month in New York too, so it's just, that makes it all the nicer. But It's nice to be with the devotees, it's nice to be with you every morning, Raghunath. I just want to say.
Thank you. And I really relish this morning we have together.
Me too. All right, let's get going.
Alrighty. We're going to start with this secret invocation. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Gyana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Reading from the second canto, chapter 2, and finished text 35 finally.
Yes, we finished reading that commentary.
And we're in text 36.
Yeah, but you know what? Maybe we could just go back just a little bit.
All right.
That Well, yeah, we're I think we have the last two. We'll finish up this chapter today, 36 and 37. But
Just
if
to
we go,
get in the flow.
yeah, just get back in the flow, right? If we go back to text 34, and again, all of this is in the context of Maharaj Pariksit asking Sukadeva Goswami, what is a person meant to do with their life? You know, what is a person meant to do as they're approaching death? What are they not to do? And different yoga paths were described in this chapter by Shukadeva Goswami, but he's concluding by saying that ultimately it's developing your love for God, or developing your love for Krishna. That is really the goal, and the most direct path to that is what's most beneficial. So in text 34, he says that by going back to his guru's guru, you know, to Lord Brahma, like the top, top person in the universe. And he said, the great personality, Brahma, with great attention and concentration of mind, studied the Vedas 3 times. And after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that.
I love that word.
Ascertained?
Scrutinizingly.
Okay. Yeah, here's the most intelligent person 3 times scrutinizing and then ascertaining.
Yeah.
That rati, attraction, right? Rati, attraction to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of dharma. Okay, that's the top. So you're asking, I'm telling. And I'm not saying it's just myself. I'm backing up by saying Lord Brahma, he figured this out. And it's not even just him. He figured it out with great attention and concentration, 3 times studying the Vedas. So it's authorized, he's saying. Right? It's been very carefully considered that it's this attraction. We're going to be attracted to something. We're all attracted to something. So the wise person is saying, let me carefully consider, scrutinizingly, analyze, what is the most beneficial object of attraction? And here it's being stated, ultimately that's God, our very source, when you reconnect to that source. So this rati is what is the goal, developing that. And then, so text 34 says, that he's right in your own heart. You can ascertain that just by thinking about it a bit. And that was the long commentary that we went over last week for 3 days. And now we get to the verses that we have today, text 36 and text 37, which are all about how do we develop that rati? How do we develop that attraction? How does one actually love God? How is one attracted to God? The main, most important way to go about developing that rati, that attraction, is through hearing him. So hearing Bhagavatam, and so that's what these 2 texts will be all about.
Text 36. O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. And this is what we do. When we're doing a japa, this is what we do when we're reading together. Or when you're very popular reading a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Right?
It's popular. It's taken off.
Or reading Krishna Lila, or reading the Ramayana, or reading the Mahabharata. We hear these stories and we become attracted to them. And the interesting thing is, we always like to hear stories. That's just the nature of the mind. It always wants to hear some type of story. Well, hey, what's up? What's going on? What's the latest? Call my mother. What's going on? My mom will just.
She's saying to you, or you're saying to her? You're asking her. She's asking you.
No, she's talking to me. When I talk to my mom, she's talking to me. But the idea is the mind wants to hear stuff all the time. And so it's really just shifting the hearing process to transcendental subjects. You could be on a Facebook or an Instagram feed of a dialogue, or hearing politics, or hearing, comedy, or hearing just, people, spiritual rants or something like that. Or you can hear real transcendental things. The ears want to hear, but it's the heart that actually becomes satisfied when you hear these transcendental things. That's why I'm making a commitment to hear Krishna Lila every night this week. That's for my Makeover Monday.
Beautiful. There's a phrase in this verse, Sanskrit phrase, Shrotavya kirtitavyascha, Smartavyo Bhagavan Rinam. So when I was reading that this morning, I said, that's familiar, Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha. And so I just kind of Googled it and I saw, that was right. If you go back to that's such an important chapter where like I see it as like kind of the seed of the whole Bhagavatam, the second chapter of the first canto, where Sutta Goswami says to the sages, therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, and remember, right? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, the worship of the personality of Godhead. And the same thing was, again, the same phrase was used in answer to Maharaj Parikat's question in the previous chapter that we just read, in the first chapter of the second canto. This very similar verse where it says, Shrotavya, Kirtitavyascha, Smartavyas. And it's basically repeated again in the very famous verse that Prahlad Maharaj speaks when his demon father asks, what have you learned in school today, kid? Right? And he says, Shravanam, Shravanam and Kirtanam and Smaranam, that, to hear about, to chant about, to remember, and then all the other processes of bhakti. So, and when it says cha, it indicates all that too. So, but I love it the way that you're phrasing it. It's really, what is bhakti-yoga? It's switching the topics that we hear about. It's switching the source that we hear about. It's just the fundamental, very fundamental practice of bhakti. So, people talk about in the Western world, it's not like in the yoga, Western yoga world, which we're talking about. Great interview yesterday with Eddie, huh?
Great interview.
He really was so lucid and clear. And so, we were comparing, contrasting Eastern and Western, Indian and Western mindsets as they apply to yoga. But I think in the Western world, in the broader Western yoga world, there's some, there's appreciation for bhakti, but I think there's not a lot of education in bhakti. So sometimes it's seen as just like this sentimental kind of thing, but it really has, the fundamental practice is like, it's just what we all just decided to do for our Makeover Monday. I will regularly, hear. I'm going to make this a practice that I regularly hear from Bhagavatam. I regularly hear from Bhagavad Gita. I regularly hear from people that can explain it well and that can, and through that, I'll be inspired to chant, and I'll be inspired to remember, that my mind then becomes absorbed in those thoughts. And that's how we kind of like, elevate the mind, purify it. And if we don't, then we end up hearing all other kind of stuff.
All other kinds of stuff. And those other, and what happens is they stay in the mind all day, right?
Yeah.
Like the other stuff will just stay in the mind. So if you have Krishna in the mind, especially in the morning and the evening, I find, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. What a nice sandwich to your day.
The sandhyas, right?
The sandhyas.
Yeah.
And it just keeps Krishna in the mind all day, because otherwise there's tons of mantras, there's tons of stories, there's tons of thoughts going through the mind all day long. And that's what a meditation is, isn't it? Mm-hmm. You're meditating on these things. They're at the forefront of your mind.
Prabhupada, he goes in this commentary, he'll say, if human society, this was his mission, right? He was just like, I want to get human society to kind of like embrace this idea of hearing. If human society gives itself to the process of hearing the Vedic literature, it will not become a victim to the impious sounds vibrated by impious men who degrade the standards of the total society, right? If we just start hearing garbage, we just develop a garbage society. Hearing is solidified by the process of chanting. One who has perfectly heard from the perfect source becomes convinced about the all-pervading personality of Godhead, and thus becomes enthusiastic in glorifying the Lord. All the great acharyas, the great teachers in the line, like Ramanuja, Madhva, Chaitanya, Saraswati Thakur, or even in other countries, Muhammad, Christ, and others, have all extensively glorified the Lord by chanting always and in every place. Because the Lord is all-pervading, which we heard about in the previous verse, right? He's in the heart of every living being. It is essential to glorify him always and everywhere. In the process of glorifying the Lord, there should be no restriction of time and space. This is called Sanatana Dharma or Bhagavat Dharma. Sanatana means eternal, always and everywhere. Bhagavat means pertaining to Bhagavan, the Lord. The Lord is the master of all time and all space, and therefore the Lord's holy names must be heard, glorified, and remembered everywhere in the world. That will bring about the desired peace and prosperity, so eagerly awaited by the people of the world.
Now, Kaustubha, it's, taken for granted, probably by you and me, how inclusive these teachings are. When Prabhupada says, Jesus Christ, Muhammad, where do you hear that? Where do you hear other spiritual paths recommending other spiritual paths as here are the masters of these paths, and they're saying the same basic things. And I feel like it's important to, not just in spiritual paths, but in life in general, what do we have in common? The whole world is trying to find what I have, how am I different from you? And with that mindset, we just create war after war after war, be it in the family, right? Be it in the society, be it in the politics, be it in over nations, in the galaxies. But the idea is like, what do I have in common with these people? And Prabhupada's so inclusive the way he lays it out. And truthfully, the entire yoga philosophy, which is why I love this in the first place, it's like, what do we have in common with all these spiritual paths? How are they connected? And it's just a great way to go into, step into our spiritual life, or else in the name of our spiritual life, I find others, and then I become very proud of my spiritual path and anti that spiritual path. When basically there's so many common threads tying us all together. And basically we're trying to fall in love with Source again. Through chanting and remembering.
It's true. Like Prabhupada had this kind of mission where he realized if we hear about God and if we glorify God, then we'll remember God and we'll uplift society. And he would commonly say, yeah, if Christianity is your thing, then do that, but do it,
Right.
But do it. Yeah.
All right, let's go to text 37.
All right. This is the last text for the chapter.
Text. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment. Isn't that great? Material enjoyment. Sounds like a good thing. No, it's actually polluted. The polluted aim of life of material enjoyment.
I mean, and I think like you could have put another phrase in there. It maybe make it more widely understandable. Like you could have said, the polluted aim of life known as like say, let's say like you become purified of the slavery to the senses, right? Something like that. Right.
Yeah, material enjoyment means that you could sort of take it like, well, what's wrong with enjoyment? It's material enjoyment. It's not fulfilling whatsoever. And thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of him, the personality of Godhead.
All right. There's a great commentary here. It's just so fundamental of what Prabhupada is commonly trying to share, that, nature provides everything that we need. Let's not get distracted by material enjoyment, right? Let's not think we need lots of cars. Let's not think we need lots of, various types of material amenities that distract us. And then we create a whole society that's polluted and disturbing and confusing and in conflict. Let's be satisfied with what nature provides easily, all the necessities, and then let's use our vital human energy to hear about and remember God, elevate our consciousness, practice yoga. You want to read it, Raghu?
Commentary, sure. This is the commentary of text 37. The sufferings of human society are due to a polluted aim of life. Collecting stuff, isn't it? It's just collecting and just being absorbed, and it takes over your mind, becomes our meditation. Our stuff becomes our meditation, namely lording it over material resources. The more human society engages in the exploitation of undeveloped material resources for sense gratification, the more it will be entrapped by the illusory material energy of the Lord. And thus, the distress of the world will be intensified instead of diminished.
It's intensifying, isn't it?
It's intense. The material world's intense. The human necessities of life are fully supplied by the Lord in the shape of food grains, milk, fruit, wood, stone, sugar, silk, jewels, cotton, salt, water, vegetables, etc. It's all provided.
Oh, yeah.
It's in sufficient quantity to feed and care for the human race of the world, as well as the living beings on each and every planet within the universe. Sounds to me like there's a lot of beings on other planets. The supply source is complete, and only a little energy by the human being is required to get his necessities into the proper channel.
This is interesting, right? It doesn't actually take all that much, but we just want so much more.
Yeah. There's no need of machines and tools or huge steel plants. He's going against the Carnegies here, okay, and U.S. Steel.
General Motors.
There is no need of machines and tools or huge steel plants for artificially creating the comforts of life. He's really just like, it seems like the whole, after the Industrial Revolution, everything went haywire.
Yeah. Well, now here's this next sentence is the whole thing in a nutshell.
There is no need of machines and tools and huge steel plants for actually creating the comforts of life. Life is never made comfortable by artificial means, but by plain living and high thinking.
There you go.
Simple living, high thinking. The highest professional thinking for human society is suggested here by Sukadeva Goswami, namely, sufficiently here in the Bhagavatam. For men
so
in this,
let's slow down for 1 second.
Okay.
So life is never made comfortable by artificial needs, right? We think, let me get that thing that's going to make my life more comfortable, right? And so we're busy creating, in the market, we to a large degree, like a politician will determine how healthy, or let's say an economist, will determine how healthy our nation is by how much people are spending on these artificial things, right? Like that becomes the measure. If lots of these artificial needs are being produced and bought, oh, well, we're doing well. But really what Prabhupada is saying here is that formula doesn't work, that we actually never become comfortable, that with every comfort we create, it also creates some kind of discomfort. So it's like what they call it, like that whack-a-mole kind of thing, where you push one thing down and it pops up in another way. We create a car for convenience, but then the cars cause so much inconvenience, etc. So, but he's saying, but the goal is the way that we actually become comfortable and satisfied is by, he says here, plain living. We could say simple living, right? Simple living and high thinking. And the value of simple living and high thinking is we'll live a comfortable life, but we'll have time and energy and a peaceful enough mind, a mind that's not entirely distracted, so that we can engage it in the right way, the way that a human is meant to engage their mind and their time. And he's saying right here, that's the highest perfectional thinking for human society is suggested here, and that's sufficient hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, right?
Is today the day we're going to drop the bomb on everybody? We want everyone to get rid of their cars. Okay. Everyone get rid of your vehicles. It's the new wisdom of the sage rule. You can only date the men and women in your village. Well, actually, I was thinking also that the only thing what are the real simple joys of life? If you're a gardener, being in the garden, it's a very simple joy. You go camping, even camping, it's like we buy so much stuff for camping. My favorite part of camping is just sleeping outside, sleep under the stars. You light a fire, you have a bonfire, that's fun. Picking berries, wild berries, foraging for little fruits, picking apples from people come upstate from the city. They leave everything New York City has to offer to go pick apples. They'll even pay money to pick the apples. All the farmers are laughing their asses off. They're paying money to pick our apples. So they go, pick strawberries. This is like the simple joys of life. And it's uncomplicated. It's almost like what we want after complicating our life so back. How can I go back to simple pleasures? And then beyond the simple pleasure, that most deep pleasure of going inside. And, when you meet people who are very attached to the Bhagavatam, they can just dive into that Bhagavatam and arrange their life. So they read that Bhagavatam all day long. Like Parjanya Maharaj, remember him?
Yes, I do.
There was a man, I think he lived in Syracuse.
It was Syracuse, yeah.
He's like a little old man. He and his wife owned this hotel in Syracuse. It's like a motel.
Patel Motel.
Yeah. And whenever our band would go through town, we'd stay at this hotel. And he was Indian. And he'd have our band stay at the hotel. And he'd invite us to his little house at the motel. And he'd make us he and his wife would make this incredible Gujarati feast. And then he'd bring us in this living room and just read the Srimad Bhagavatam to us. Mm-hmm. And it was so nice. And you could tell this man just reads all day long, the Srimad Bhagavatam. He was probably like 65 years old. Yeah,
because when you have this motel, right, you hire a couple of workers and they kind of clean their
No, they don't hire anybody.
They got their family, right? Yeah,
their whole family's cleaning.
But he's like the old guy in the family now, so he probably doesn't even have to do that. He just sits there and reads.
Just sits there and reads the Bhagavatam.
And he's happy.
Very happy.
Yeah. We used to roll in there with like 25 monks, right? Something like that. They would take care of us all, give us all rooms and then cook for us all. And then he would read Bhagavatam.
There's a lot of, this is a little inside secret here. Mara doesn't even know this, but there's a lot of Gujaratis who own motels in America. So when monks drive by, they just say, hey, we're a bunch of monks. Can we stay at your hotel? And they'll let you stay at their hotel and they'll cook you this huge feast. I've eaten Gujarati food all over the United States. Yeah, but that idea of just like that simple living and hearing on a regular, it's true too. Sometimes we give these classes, like this weekend I'm going to Lake Placid. We do these like Hari Katha, where you're just speaking about transcendental topics. It's almost like time stands still and you can listen and hear forever. Hmm. And sometimes Radhanath Swami or Indrajumna Swami or these incredible mahants who give these classes and they have so much information in their skull that just comes out of their mouth. Like Radhanath Swami is like an encyclopedia of incredible stories. Sometimes he'll go so late into the night. Like people have to say, hey, Maharaj, it's like 1 a.m. or it's we got to stop. People have to because you lose track of time. It's actually, if you're managing a program like that, it's tricky. But if you're in it, you're almost like swept away in it.
We were talking about the Broome Street Temple yesterday. Once I invited Maharaj there to speak, and it was Ram Navami. It was, the appearance day of Lord Ram. And so there's a bunch of guests there from Eddie's studio, a bunch of yoga students and so on. And Radhanath Swami was speaking on Ramayana. He started, and he went for 4 hours, And, he does that in India, and like, they're used to that, but like these yoga students, they're not used to sitting there for 4 hours. I remember he started going and going, and he was just getting started and we're 3 hours in, and then at the end it's like, oh, did I speak too much?
Well, it's one of those things, like if you're a devotee and you've crossed that threshold, I always call it like the threshold into like that spiritual world where you're like, you just get swept up in it and you almost lose, because time is of this realm. And when these spiritual topics are of another realm. But if you're sort of new to it, you're still in your material world. This is a spiritual talk I'm going to by a Swami. And what time is it? And I've got a plan for some type of like a thing I'm doing, or I'm going to meet friends afterwards, or I'm a little hungry. You're still sort of like in your body and mind. But once you go through that threshold into the spiritual world, you're outside of the body and mind.
It happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that current just sort of takes you away.
And that's what's happening here with Maharaj Pariksit. He didn't eat or sleep for 7 days, right? And you get a little bit like that, those people that have that taste, they have that rati, they have that attraction,
Right.
And
I'd be like, oh, I'm so thirsty. I'm so thirsty. Sukadeva Goswami, can you hold on a second? I gotta get a drink.
Can we take a nap break?
I gotta get a yerba mate or something. I'm dozing off.
Prabhupada, he goes on. He says, by sufficient hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, the polluted aim of life, namely lording it over matter will subside, right? If we just hear it regularly, have faith, right? Like we think, oh, my material desires are so strong. How can I ever counter them? Just have a little faith. If you hear sufficiently, if you hear daily, if you hear regularly, it'll start to subside. So he says, the polluted aim of life, namely lording over matter, will subside. And the people in general, in all parts of the world, will be able to live a peaceful life of knowledge and bliss, right? That true nature of us will come out. Yeah. There's a word here in this verse, katamritam, right? Katamritam.
It's like my favorite verse, Tavagatamritam.
Tavagatamritam, right? Yeah, when I heard that, I was reminded of that verse.
That's my inspiration verse.
Your inspiration verse? How's that?
Tavagatamritam taptajivanam kababir editam kalmasapaham shravanamangala srimarattatam bhuvi granantiye burida janaha.
Translation?
The nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities are the life and the soul of those suffering in this material world. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
The nectar of your words, O Krishna, and the descriptions of your activities are the life and soul of those suffering in this material world. These narrations, transmitted by learned sages, eradicate one's sinful reactions and bestow good fortune upon whoever hears them. These narrations are broadcast all over the world and are filled with spiritual power. Certainly, those who spread the message of Godhead are the most munificent. Yeah, this is my why I wake up in the morning verse.
It's so, this verse, it was spoken by the gopis. It was spoken by the gopis in the very pinnacle of the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? In the description of the Rasa Leela, where Krishna momentarily disappears from their vision. And there's a whole chapter, this song of the gopis, where they, from the core of their heart, this is, and again, this is the way that I see it, is that this is the pinnacle of all of Vyasadev's work, of all the yoga literature. It's right in this section of Bhagavatam, these few chapters, that become the very pinnacle of all literature. It's very beautiful poetry, and it's very beautiful sentiments, and it's expressing the highest spiritual teachings. And the gopis are pouring their hearts out in the most beautiful prayers to Krishna, expressing their love and their dependence on their connection to God. And so much of what they're expressing has to do with the nature of the relationship between the soul and their source, or the soul and God. And so this, in this verse, they say, just hearing about you, right? The nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities, they're the life and the soul, of those suffering in the material world. That's our lifeline to the spiritual realm, It's hearing these descriptions that helps us understand what is spirituality, what is spiritual existence. And these narrations are transmitted by learned sages like Vyasadeva, right? He compiles them in the Bhagavatam for us. They eradicate one's bad karma, and they bestow nothing but good fortune upon whoever hears them, right? You'll shift, you'll purify the mind. You'll purify the thoughts. It'll transform your reality. These narrations are broadcast all over the world, and they're filled with spiritual power. You know, they are. You know, one just has to have the faith in that. You know. And this verse was also. Can you think of a place where this verse in Chaitanya's Leela was quoted?
This was, the King Prataparuja.
Yeah, exactly.
There was this king, you know, when you think of a king, you think of like, who's this guy? What? It's just like, you know, when we were growing up, it was like a Zsa Zsa Gabor or something, like someone like
Zsa Zsa Gabor.
I don't know where that came from, but you think of someone like
luxury,
incredibly like materialistic or something like that.
Full on
luxury.
Think
of a king. A king's coming in crazy clothes and a huge hat and a scepter and a golden crown and jewels. And this king just wanted to talk to Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya was like, step away from me, step away from me. It just was following him around, basically.
He was trying, yeah. All of the associates of Sri Chaitanya were saying, this king, he's, because Sri Chaitanya was a sannyasi, right? A serious renunciate. He's like, I don't associate with materialists like these kings who are just like living in super luxury. But the king was a pure devotee. He just wanted to serve and meet and you know, offer his respects to Sri Chaitanya. And Sri Chaitanya kept refusing. And all the associates were saying, no, this king is no ordinary king. He's a very sincere spiritualist, you know. And it was kind of like a game that was being played in a sense by Sri Chaitanya.
Right. Lord Chaitanya, of course, knows
the heart of this soul.
But he's sort of like playing it off because, okay, you're this king. I want to distance. And it made the king more eager, followed him, and they snuck. So Lord Chaitanya's resting in the garden.
Yeah.
And he sneaks up to Lord Chaitanya and starts.
In disguise. He was in disguise. Yeah, he was in disguise. It was during the Rati Yatra, you know, like during this, and the cart had stopped.
I love this concept of disguises. Come in disguise.
So everyone told him what to do. Disguise yourself.
Disguise yourself.
And so Sri Chaitanya, have you been to the Jagannath Vallabha Gardens before in Puri?
I can't remember.
It's still beautiful to this day, you know, that they preserve those gardens. And so in the middle of the Rath Yatra ceremony, the cart stopped. Sri Chaitanya went into those gardens and was resting there. I've been there, but it's beautiful there. And then the king came in disguise, right? And it just like he came disguised as just a humble Vaishnava, and Sri Chaitanya is a sannyasi, so it's natural that he would serve the sannyasi, serve the renunciate. So he started massaging his feet. And Sri Chaitanya is just like absorbed in the mood of the Rath Yatra, absorbed in this deep spiritual thought. The Rath Yatra is very connected to the mood of the gopis. Mm. And so then he began to, you know, by memory, you know, to recite this chapter from the Bhagavatam, the song.
Yeah, not just this verse, this whole chapter.
Yeah, this whole chapter. And I mean, if you can just try at least a little bit to, you know, by the grace of the devotees and by, you know, by hearing this and trying sincerely to understand this entire philosophy, when you get to those chapters, which are just like the most esoteric of the literature, you know, even if you can understand it just a little bit, you know, I realize it's so beyond me, but even if I can just understand it just a little bit, practically you get chills reading it. The meanings of these verses is so deep. And when he's chanting this chapter, reciting this chapter to Sri Chaitanya there in the gardens, and when he gets to this verse, Sri Chaitanya is just so excited that he jumps up and he embraces the king. And this was the desire of the king, you know, right? For months, you know, he was just trying somehow to get the mercy of Sri Chaitanya. I mean, this king, I can't get it. You know, he's thinking, my being the king has just put me in the most unfortunate position, because here's Sri Chaitanya himself, and I can't associate with. He's ignoring. I can't serve him. I can't get his mercy. He's ignoring me. He's almost like sees me as like just the worst person in the whole kingdom. You know.
Does it say what his disguise was?
I think it just says it said he wore like Vaishnava dress. I think, you know. So I think he was just dressed as like a common,
like a simple
person. A simple person, yeah. And so when he hears this verse, he jumps up and he embraces him and says, you are the most munificent, right? Because this verse says, those that spread this message are the most munificent. He says, you are the most munificent, and his desire is fulfilled. He's there in the embrace of Sri Chaitanya. And when I hear this verse, I can't help but think, I in my mind, I have to associate this verse with that great soul who passed away, a couple of months ago, Bhakti True Swami, right?
Oh,
because he used to sing this verse. He's the kind of person that you think that you could see in all his behavior how deep he was, how gentle he was, how kind he was to everyone, how he moved through the world in this very thoughtful Vaishnava way, that when he reads these verses, his understanding must be so much deeper, right? What he
talking about Bhakti True Swami, an incredible leader, and he's from Bengal, right?
He's Bengali, yeah.
He's Bengali, and he was a beautiful, beautiful soul. Recently left his body. Thousands of followers around the world.
Yeah.
But sweet like anything.
Yeah.
He's the Lord of, when you worship Krishna, Krishna is the Lord of sweetness. You become sweet.
That's your favorite bhajan.
Yeah. And if people are bitter, they're doing something wrong. They're not worshiping Krishna properly, because we're all sweet deep down. We're just covered over.
That's right.
Right.
So that sweetness was manifesting in him. And like I keep going back, we keep going back to these verses from the Gita in the 12th chapter, where Krishna says, who's really dear to him? That person who's even-minded under all kind of circumstances, and who becomes the kind friend to every living entity, who carefully tries not to disturb any living entity. And so he was that kind of person. He had this very gentle demeanor, very Vaishnava behavior. And so, you can understand that when this person reads these verses, his understanding is going to be that much deeper, because it's not clouded by all that garbage that, that we all bring into our mind, that, that the fact that the sweet nature was manifesting in him, you could see that in him. And so he used to sing this verse, and he would sing it just it's in a very beautiful way. I don't know if it was quite like that.
That wasn't sweet.
That was sweet. It was sweet in your own way. But he would do it very slow. It was like every word he was relishing, and it's a fact. Every phrase in this verse is actually beautiful. Shravana Mangalam. That by hearing it, everything becomes auspicious.
Shravana Mangalam.
Right.
Yeah, it's beautiful rhyming.
Yeah.
The nectar of your words and descriptions of your activities are the life and soul of those suffering in this material world. Mm. We'll do anything to get rid of the suffering of the material world, and it never actually gets rid of the suffering. What's really popular lately is the news, finding out the news, watching the news. Don't you read the news? And you become more, I've got to become educated in the news, and everybody's suffering more watching the news. Mm. It's not actually giving you any objective truth, and it's making people angry. The news is making people angry, with dissatisfied. Yeah. This is the news on the soul. And when you hear this, if you want an honest account, I was listening to the news, and I was like playing it in my pocket, in my phone. And after a while, it's just like, I'm freaking sick of the news. I'm sick of the news. I don't even know who to believe anymore. And I just flicked it to the Mahabharata, which I have on Audible. So I'm playing the Mahabharata in my pocket now. Mm. And I'm like, and it's not just the story. It's the it's the subtle teachings of the culture that are just going into the mind.
Right.
And even though there's suffering in the Mahabharata, there's tons of suffering going on in the Mahabharata, you're seeing from the most zoomed out picture, and that there's a benevolent, loving, divine force. And even though it's sort of as much of a soap opera as our world is, when you're hearing it described by the sages and Vyas and of Krishna, these transcendental pastimes, there's like a peace that comes over you just by hearing it. your activities are the life and the soul of those suffering in this material world. It's actually what our mind really needs. And it breaks through all those layers. We use that example like the gobstopper. Imagine a gobstopper that's just disgusting. Like every layer is like either incredibly sour, incredibly bitter, incredibly gnarly, too spicy, like just various horrible tasting layers. But at the very center is something very wonderful, very sweet. That's what this is. That's what it is. I have layers of greed that are like possessing me. How can I accumulate more things? Layers of lust. How can that body satisfy me? How can that body satisfy me? Layers of, resentment and anger. Oh, they did this to me. I'm going to get even with them. How dare they? How dare they insult me? Don't they know who I am? And we got a layer of, that's the layer of revenge, right? Then there's the layer of just illusion, like thinking, if I just do this, I'll be happy. And if I go there, I'll be happy. And if I want to go to that beach, I'll be happy. If I can just go somewhere else, anywhere but where I am right now, I'll be happy. It's just like layers and layers. And the Bhagavatam is just peeling back those layers by concentrating right on the center. And then when that gobstopper starts to melt away, we're just nothing left but that core of sweetness. Everybody on Zoom, not the others, just the Zoomers. No, just kidding.
The others as well, Raghunath. The others as well.
Everybody, the others and Zoom, everybody, even the people you hate their guts, those people too, they have a very deep core of sweetness. And that core of sweetness is divinity inside them that we've just let cover over with plaque on top of plaque. It's just like those walls in New York when you like renovate your apartment. We're like, oh my God, look at the people, look at the paint behind this wall. And then you strip that paint down. There's like a whole nother level of paint. And then you strip it down. And then finally you get to this pristine, brick wall. That's like every New Yorker likes to peel it back and get to the brick. And so there is something very special in that authenticness of what's underneath all those layers. And that is, underneath it all is this very sweet being. What do you think about that, Kaustubha?
Love it. Okay, we all got a Makeover Monday thing to do.
Yeah, you can join the throngs of people going with Kaustubha, or you can go on my thin little twigish limb. The road less traveled. Thanks, everybody. What a fun Monday. It's Labor Day. It's still sort of the weekend, but it feels like Monday. Another exciting day of transcendental weed whacking. Thanks for everybody. If you want to join us here on Zoom, we do this all the time. You can join us if you're one of the others out there. Come join this crazy little family. Join our Patreon party. We got a Patreon party going on. Do we have classes today, Mara?
No.
Mara? No. Okay. Did I say Patreon party? I'm in a Patreon
Pause.
A Patreon pause. On the days off when we don't have classes, you could just listen to back class. They're all there. Yeah. You can pretend they're live. It's a recorded class. And this week coming up, in 2 weeks, I'm at the Bhakti Center, and there's limited space because it's a rooftop. We're trying to do social distancing. Come down, see me and Kaustubha G. Mara's going to come there. She's going to stalk her way down there. No, she's not.
You should stick around till Sunday, Raghunath, and then we can go do that Harinam together. Go do Kirtan out.
Yeah. That's next Saturday, the 19th, at the Bhakti Center in New York City.
2 Saturdays from now, huh?
Yeah, not this weekend. I'm in Lake Placid with Robin Shaver, Kelly Skinner, G.
Wow.
Excited. And then, Bhakti Center in New York City. See all the New York City peeps? Maybe the Europeans will come down. Maybe the Canadians will hop the fence and come down there. I don't know if they're allowed here yet. We locked the Canadian. No, they're not. We locked the Canadians out. What are we, crazy? Thanks for everybody joining us, everybody. Sri Ram.